Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here at my next Naruto Shippuden episode review. This one is going to be for episode 468, The Successor. So before we get into the review, link to watch the episode if you haven't seen it yet is in the description below. But other than that, let's get into the review. Overall, general thoughts on the episode. I really liked it once again. I thought this was a really good end to this very important arc. It will be always called like filler on list of episodes from Naruto, but this adds so much to basically the story of kind of why all of this happened in the first place. Like without this conflict between Indra and Ashura stemming from Kaguya and Hagoromo and Hamura, uh, the whole situation that we're in right now with Sasuke, with Naruto, and so on would never have happened. Madara wouldn't have done that. Hashirama Senju wouldn't. And this, adding so much more detail to the basic story that we had before of just Indra and Ashura, their souls reincarnated. Now that we actually know those two characters, why they kind of fought and why they continue to reincarnate their souls, is a really big thing. So I definitely thought it was worthwhile to spend a decent amount of time telling this story, even though it takes away overall, I suppose, from the continuity of the just the Kaguya fight being all in a row. But I thought it was really well done, and this one being primarily the fight, the naming of the successor, the conflict, fighting, and then kind of wrapping everything up, and then obviously ending with coming back to where we started, and that this is the kind of spirit of Hagoromo telling this story to the reincarnated Hokages. So just setting up that, okay, we're going back to canon now. You guys have the importance of this story. You know why Naruto and Sasuke are so important now. That they are the ones who can stop this cycle of just endless soul reincarnating and fighting and actually fix things here. So, important episode. Obviously, I'm excited to get back to canon, but this was really well done. So, let's get into specifics here. Obviously, we start off immediately with where we ended off last episode. The naming of the successor, and it happens straight away. Just, it's Ashura, and immediately Indra is obviously like, why, explain to me why you didn't choose me, and even Ashura is shocked as like, why did you choose me? And it ultimately, as expected, came down to this whole idea of how they approached doing it. Indra explains that he did basically the same thing as Ashura, but he did it on his own. He didn't have the help from anyone else to get the water going or to destroy the divine tree. He just went in there, boom, water, destroyed the divine tree and left. And didn't really check to make sure that even though he left the tools, the potential for this to become a peaceful place again, like Ashura, he didn't stay long enough to kind of ensure that it was peaceful. In that you have this sudden shift of them kind of relying on the kind of bountifulness of nature from the divine tree. That's gone now and everything's on the water, but because Indra just made this happen on his own, how are the people going to do it? And so what they explain to us is basically that there were wars over who controls the water supplies, and it became more this thing about just controlling the life of this kind of town village, as opposed to with Ashura's obviously thing we saw last episode. What was so successful with him was that he managed to inspire everyone else to help build the well, help get them out from relying on the divine tree, and just focus on getting the water. And so because of that, no one felt like they owned the water. It was just this thing that they all had to survive. And so that's the kind of implication here, that Indra, I suppose you could second say, he didn't really do anything wrong, perhaps, but just as they kind of explain later on, it's the curse of the Sharingan. This idea that when you look at someone with the Sharingan, it just has this kind of effect of just showing this displacement of power, that the person with the Sharingan is so powerful and the person without it is weak, and they kind of fear the person with it. And that's always something that people who have the Sharingan will kind of suffer from. And I can't really remember, like, just in the visuals of the episode, does the Indra just always have the Sharingan active and he doesn't need to kind of turn it off and on? Obviously, it was clearly shown that he could turn the Mangekyo Sharingan on and off, but the normal Sharingan, it seemed to be kind of something that really affected. him. And I kind of like that they just went as far as to do that. That part of the reason why it ended up not working out was just because the people, when they saw Indra, they didn't really treat him as like someone just come to help. They just saw him as someone with power who could help them, and that they weren't on his level, and that they would either worship him or fear him basically. And he's just been, I suppose, so used to this, like always being ahead of everyone, being the most skilled, the most powerful, that it's really gotten into his head. And that combined with obviously the manipulations of Black Zetsu in the background, and you can see where exactly things are going, because this episode further references the whole idea of Zetsu manipulating the Sharingan stone monument thing. That is meant to be a warning to Sharingan users about like what exactly the um, like the kind of curse of it, whereas Zetsu meant and ended up turning it into this thing of like you have to unlock the Sharingan. The only way to do that is to obviously like kill the people close to you and so on. That this is the way to go forward by reading the different parts of the stone monument. But yeah, so that was a pretty big thing. Just getting the kind of reasoning behind it, and that obviously Hagoromo really saw that Ashura did things the right way. He inspired people, brought them together using chakra, and they helped to kind of fix the problems of the world, which is exactly obviously what Hagoromo did with the people when he went on his kind of journey around the world to kind of fix things in the aftermath of the battle, of course, against Kaguya. So obviously he got the kind of guy at the bridge, and they kind of formed it together, and that's how Ninshu started. And Ashura is the one who was very clearly bringing that on, in that Indra didn't seem like he was ever going to give anyone the power of chakra or like bond them together because of that. He's very much moved away from the way things were before. Because let's remember, when he was younger, he was very much into this idea. He was the one who said to Hagoromo earlier on in this arc, I think we are moving more and more away from chakra and Ninshu as being a way to connect people, and people are more focused on the techniques. And it was ultimately, like him who was the one who was the expert at the techniques and kind of changing it in that direction. But he still fundamentally believed that what it was about was connecting people, and obviously he's changed over time because of that. So I just think the development of Indra as a character has been done really well. Um, but yeah, effectively, Indra leaves after this point, leaving Ashura to kind of get the explanation for why he was chosen, and why Indra's way is not the right way, and why Ashura is. And you have Indra obviously go off. His two key followers, who he seems to really care about, go with him, and it's implied early on in the episode that he kills them. And then we come back later on and see what exactly he did. He did in fact kill them, kind of Chidori straight through the chest, killing them, unlocking his Mangekyo Sharingan in the process, because he had understood that basically by losing the people closest to him, it would power up his Sharingan, and he's just become going more and more down this road of obsession with power. But I did like the moment of just that when he did it, he was sad about it. That it wasn't just that he killed them for just to get the power, that he was actually upset about having to do that and having to rely on killing people around him to gain power. And that, yeah, the tear, I think, was a kind of telling point in that this isn't just a guy who has just completely gone off the deep end and has turned completely evil. He knows what he's doing is kind of, some of the things he's doing is wrong, but obviously he believes very heavily in his path of Ninshu, which obviously kind of Zetsu kind of helping him to kind of see that by like, no, the future of Ninshu is what you think it is. It is not this whole bringing people together, the bonds, the importance of that going forward. Love and bonds, I suppose, is the way they kind of refer to the kind of Hagoromo Ashura style of Ninshu. Which again, that's how it started. That is Ninshu. It was initially just you bond people with chakra, and that is the most inherent way to bring people together. Initially, it gave people extra kind of power, stamina, but not really like superpower techniques like the ones we know from the show. And it was really only Indra who properly brought that stuff into play. But obviously, at that, we get a slight cutaway scene with Kana, and she's just talking to their other friend, and it was just a little setup moment, just a little tease that she's looking for Ashura, and they just kind of reflect on, wow, he was chosen as the successor, and it's just like it's been long enough that you've fallen in love with him, and it was just this moment of like she gets embarrassed by it, calls him an idiot, and it's just like okay, they're very very much going down the road of Kana and Ashura as being a relationship. That's where the Uzumaki Senju clans come from, and that's like okay, cool. That's a really good little reveal there that ship is actually what happens, and it's obviously confirmed much later on in the episode. When Hagoromo's dying, obviously Ashura says father, but Kana also says father, and then the three boys say grandfather at the same time. So the and it specifically mentioned your descendants, and it kind of zooms in a little bit on those three. So confirmed, and that's just a little nice moment there. But then the fight actually happens. Obviously, Indra has awoken the Mangekyo Sharingan, comes in, and we get the fight. And I really like this fight, actually. I thought it was really well done. They didn't go overboard with it because they obviously know that effectively the big one they have to get perfectly right, Naruto Sasuke, is coming up. And so they didn't want to have Indra Ashura like be just a better fight than the upcoming Naruto Sasuke one that's going to end the series, basically. But I like that they didn't like make it just completely skippable. That there were Ashura has a new move we've never seen before that was really cool. The giant Rasengan that has like 5 normal Rasengans in it, and the kind of outer layer basically just acts as a shield, and that pops, the other 5 come out, and he gets a good hit in on Indra. And you had some really big moments as Ashura kind of had these epic parts where he got into the fight. The music picked up, and it was him really stepping up. Obviously, helped by the fact that Hagoromo chose him as the new successor to Ninshu, and kind of gave him his power. So he obviously later on unlocks the Sage of Six Paths power, and he has the kind of rods and the truth-seeking orbs, and he's able to combat the Susanoo of Indra, and it just makes for like okay, we're seeing these big techniques that we know of from the likes of Naruto, Hashirama, Madara, but these are the people who used them for like the first time basically, and so it's a really it was a really cool way to see that like we're seeing the first battle of these reincarnations, in that it's the originals battling, and they're using these techniques that later down the road other versions will use, and it really highlights kind of how similar in some ways a lot of these characters are, but obviously different in others. And I just thought it was well done without overshadowing stuff to come. In that, like it wasn't a really long fight or anything like that. There was a lot of talking, a couple of back and forths of just like the reveals. Like Indra gets an attack in, Ashura blocks an attack, he gets an attack in, and then obviously the big conclusion I thought was really well done with this idea that very clearly Indra has more power than Ashura, but Ashura has people behind him that support him. And so we get the true way of Ninshu, of like Hagoromo having everyone else join hands and connect through Ninshu and basically link their chakra together, and extending that out to kind of give it to Ashura. And it was a really cool moment because Ashura then uses that power to basically, for the first time, basically invent the move that is basically Hashirama's signature move, the kind of thousand-armed kind of Buddha summon thing that has all the attacks. That is kind of like his key move that kind of won him the fight basically against Madara. So I thought that was really well done how they did that, in that it was very clearly all of these people together bonding, beating the person who goes solo, and really highlighting that that's the difference in power, that the person who chooses kind of solitude on purpose as a way to kind of keep power is kind of struggling against the person who can draw people in to kind of link power. And it really highlights the difference in their kind of techniques, and that the Susanoo is basically, a solo technique. It is a really super powered, solo technique, whereas the Sage of Six Paths power is more kind of support ability. You can link with other people's, and they can power you up and stuff like that. So I really liked how that overall worked, and obviously this attack doesn't defeat Indra, but it gets a big enough hit in on that Indra decides to retreat. And from there, it's basically just this idea that they do continue to fight over the years, over Ninshu, because of this disagreement, and obviously Indra continuously feels like Hagoromo made the wrong choice, and that pursuing Ninshu down the path that Ashura is going to follow as the leader isn't going to basically create war in his mind. And I suppose it's one of those situations where you get that moment where Indra comes to visit Hagoromo prior to his death. This is because this is the key bit. This is the absolute key part of these overall episodes, explaining how this reincarnation cycle comes to exist. And so Indra comes to Hagoromo's deathbed basically and tells him, this fight may not end in my life, so I will continue. My soul will be reborn from generations to come until I accomplish my goal. And Ashura, basically, upon hearing this, basically pledges to do the same. That he will fight and defend for as many generations as it takes as well. And I suppose the reasoning for Indra is the kind of key part here. And he basically says is just that I think your way of, choosing Ninshu and kind of, in his mind, hiding away from the power, the incredible power of Kaguya, and kind of running away from everything related to her is the wrong way that will only cause pain into the future, and he'll continue to fight. You definitely get the sense that he's so obsessed with power, he's kind of lost sight of things, and that it's a kind of illogical kind of situation here, and that he's basically just saying, because I disagree with you, I will cause conflict. And until you agree with me and let me kind of take over, the world won't have peace, even though it's Indra who is technically going to be the one causing that. Whereas Ashura just on his own is trying to bring people together in the right way, and Indra is fundamentally the one causing the problems, but he thinks he's correct, that power is the way to kind of keep things in line. So really well done. Like, obviously there's a little bit more they probably could have told, and that they really flash by a couple of moments where we see like Ashura with the Nine Tails. Like, was that confirmed at any point? It was just a kind of weird visual we saw there. So there's potentially other stuff, like I assume they fight over the tailed beasts over time and so on, but it was in my mind a overall like pretty well executed arc. I just getting to personally know Indra and Ashura as individuals, in that they are very much their own characters, while also being somewhat similar to Madara, Sasuke, Naruto, Hashirama, but still are their own characters. I as I said, really liked the Ashura's new kind of Rasengan technique. That was a big surprise that they actually gave us a new technique, but just really good job at just explaining to us this really important origin story. And I like that final scene of just Hagoromo finishing the story and saying to them all, this story, this is why everything that's happening right now, this current fight against Kaguya, Naruto and Sasuke, fighting together to take her down, is so important, because these two being in any way able to work together highlights something that hasn't happened before. And if things go the right way, we could have, we could end this kind of cycle of hatred, end this cycle of fighting between my two sons, basically. And it's just a big moment, of course. Now, obviously, the question is like, what are the Hokages going to do when Naruto and Sasuke are the key players in this? But we'll obviously see as the episodes progress. But yeah, that's basically the all I wanted to say about the episode. Now, I think some people will get confused and annoyed potentially about the preview for next week's episode. I think it's very easy to jump to the conclusion that next week's episode is a filler. But as far as I'm aware, what the episode seems to be hinting at, it is not a filler episode. It is not the direct return to canon, in that like it's not going to be the direct next chapter of the manga that should be in place. They're actually putting this separate side story that is canon, drawn by Kishimoto, written by Kishimoto, but it's from like a post episode 700 thing that I think came out in relation to one of the movies as a kind of sketch kind of type thing. So it is a completely, canon story. It's just the timing of when they're planning to tell this kind of relatively unrelated to the main plot story is a little bit odd, but it is going to be a canon episode. It's not just made up to fill in time for an episode. It is a actual, Kishimoto story. So it should be pretty interesting, and I think a lot of people will actually quite like it if this is the episode I'm thinking about. But yeah, that's been the video. So I'll just end by saying if you want to follow me on Twitter or Tumblr, links are in the description. And then if you want to support my channel, but to help me make more videos, better quality, and help me get stuff like a new camera, you can support my channel by donating on PayPal. There's a PayPal donation link in the description, as well as a link to my Patreon page, which obviously has a bunch of different reward tiers, which you can basically decide on discussion topics and stuff like that, depending on how much you pledge in the Patreon and which tier you decide to support. But yeah, other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.